You are listening to the superfreakmedia podcast network. If you like this podcast, please be sure to show your support and follow us on our other social media platforms. Check out the links listed in the description of this episode to find out more. Thank you.
And then obviously in 99 you get like a massive CGI fist bashing through the door. We don't want a breathing door, just do something bigger. Yeah, some giant fisting session from the nursery door.
I never thought we'd get onto fisting with Hill House, but there we are.
I always found ways to creep it in.
I was going to bring it up as soon as I saw Craig, so... Hello and welcome to the Their Queer podcast, the podcast where two homos called Liam decide to go to a big fat house, look for some queer stuff and get scared along the way.
Spooky.
Very convincing.
Yeah, I'm an actor.
Ha! Ha! I'm acting.
What can I say?
I'm very impressed. So this month we are joined by a very special guest, the one and only Craig Fisher. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Liam.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. So Craig's agreed to join us as we discover all things Hill House. We're going to look at the Haunting, the 1963 classic. We're going to be then looking at The Haunting 1999. Briefly. And then we'll be looking at Mike Flanagan's masterpiece, The Haunting of the Hill House 2018. But the main focus will be on the 1963 film. Mm-hmm. And don't worry, we'll give the book a shout out, but just be patient with that one. So thank you very much.
Amazing. I'm really looking forward to this episode. Thank you so much, Craig, for agreeing to come on. I know we've definitely got to have an episode, I think, where we discuss some 80s camp slasher film at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I think this is a good start. We'll ease you into it.
Ease me in by the back door of the 60s.
What's your profanity?
I mean, you said it. That's it. Quote of the podcast right there.
Cool. Are we done now then?
That's it, yeah. Goodbye. I'm excited to kick this off. For a long time, I think when we compiled a list of like films we wanted to cover, Liam, this was always on the list as like something we wanted to dive into. This is a bit different for us because this is more of an old school ooky spooky episode, but I'm so excited, and I will say I've actually had a whale of a time, like, watching these films in the series and seeing these threads pulled through all three adaptations of the book. So if we're wanting to kind of kick stuff off, I know that we usually have a bit of a Q&A with our guest. So I'm wanting to find out a bit more about you, Craig, because I suppose I feel like I've known you for a little bit. It's been a minute on Instagram.
Yeah.
We've spoken to each other, like known maybe a little bit about each other's work. But you're an incredibly talented filmmaker who specialises in like horror and queer themed films, I'd say. How did you get into that then? How did that all start for you?
Well, it started, probably since I was a little kid. Having watched horror through my whole life, I always knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I did the usual thing. Did major in college, film and TV in university. And then when university finished, I just fell into a boring job and worked 70-hour weeks to pay for my rent and bills. And I didn't actually do any work. I'd always called myself a wannabe filmmaker, but never actually made any films until about 10 years ago, where I made my first short with the help of some friends. Mm-hmm. And through working on the first short, you get to meet more people, you get to learn a lot of things. And then, just been bashing out some short horrors since then, over the past 10 years.
I mean, I'm a huge fan of your work. I mean, I think that's obviously
thank you very much.
How I
likewise, obviously.
Thank you. I think that's obviously how I came to know about you. That, and also some of the pictures you post on your Instagram are certainly.
No! What do you mean? What are you talking about?
Well, I don't know. So they pull you in. They're very inviting.
They're all film posters. They're all film horror posters.
Absolutely.
And reviews.
Speaking of pulling, that does lead me on to my question to you, Craig. What's it like being an attractive person?
I would also like to know.
I'm not sure. You'll have to ask the guy behind me.
Big fan of your work and your Instagram, apparently. So nicely done. But all I would kind of ask then is, with you kind of studying film then, because I mean, that was something I definitely wanted to know about, because I know it's different for everyone, how they get into it. What was it then that made you take the leap then and go, do you know what, I am going to become a filmmaker now and I am going to do this?
Well, the job I was doing is in pub management. And honestly, when I say 70-hour weeks, they were 70-hour weeks. And I was just getting fed up of it. So then I decided to go back to uni to do a master's. So I moved away from management. I just went to Bar Monkey instead. So it's less hours. And then I started my film masters. Film masters are very expensive. So I applied for lots of different loans. And once I started my masters, I then found out I couldn't get any of these loans, so I couldn't continue with the course.
Oh no.
But I was there long enough to meet some people who were making some short films, and I went and helped them.
Yeah.
And then from helping them, they returned the favour and helped me make my first short film.
I mean, I will definitely say I've obviously checked out your YouTube, like I think when I first came across your work and wanted to see kind of what else you're up to, but I've definitely revisited it again in prep for this episode. And I do know, I mean, The Midnight Jester is one that I really like. I think it's a really nicely put together short film. I think the cinematography is gorgeous as well. Also, you have the festive short film that you did.
A Christmas Nightmare.
A Christmas Nightmare, I definitely feel gives off Creepshow vibes. I absolutely love.
Absolutely,
love that.
That was my. I wanted to pay homage to. I mean, it didn't start off like that. The script didn't, because I co-wrote the script with a friend of mine, which is the first time I'd actually co-written anything with somebody.
Okay.
And it was just the horror story, but in creating the actual Christmas Nightmare film, I wanted to add some Creepshow elements because I knew the kind of monster I wanted to feature in the film. And then obviously the beginning of the film, you've got the opening credits, all the animation.
Yeah.
So all these things were kind of added in as per my love of Creepshow. And during that time, I think that was when the first season of Creepshow was coming out.
Yeah. Okay.
So there, it just inspired me to add blemishes of Creepshow into my film.
I think it's wonderful. And I mean, aside from obviously the films you make, I know that you deliver some really great reviews as well through your Instagram. And I will say I really do trust your opinion on a lot of stuff. I've checked out a good few films based on your recommendations. And I mean, is the film theory side of stuff equally as exciting then for you as the just, I don't know, making films or just watching? Do you like to get into that side of stuff?
Not. I mean, I wouldn't say so much theory. My reviews are basically just my thoughts.
Your ramblings.
Just my thoughts. Just my ramblings on the film. Because I do some writing reviews for Hooked on Horror, and usually they're longer reviews, a bit more in depth, and theory comes into it a bit more. Because obviously, if you've got a bigger audience, you kind of need to cater to that. But the ones on my Instagram are mainly just my ramblings, and a lot of people who do follow me on Instagram kind of know me a little bit in regards to my humor and things like that. So it's kind of a safe space to kind of just, if I want to bitch about something that I've seen in the film, or if I want to just be very complimentary about something, it's something a little less restraint than when I'm writing for Hooked on Horror, because it can be a bit more me.
Yeah, I suppose it keeps it fun and light, doesn't it? And like you said, lets you just say what you feel about stuff. I know you posted about Umma recently, which I recently checked out, and I think your review was definitely a Sony horror movie, and I was like, couldn't have said it better. Sam
Raimi Productions, Sony, everything about it. And I mean, to be fair, it was on par with what I was expecting, based on the producers and the people involved.
Yeah,
and I'm so sad because Sandra Oh, I absolutely love Sandra Oh,
that's
and
like,
that film did her dirty.
That's what disappointed me about it. I mean, like, I'll watch anything that Sandra Oh is in. If Sandra Oh released a video of her sitting in a room staring at a blank wall, I'd watch it.
Probably better than Umma.
And then it would probably
exactly.
It's such a shame because you've got like a powerhouse of an actor there, and it was just to me as well. When I finished watching it, I was like, I don't actually know what I've just sat through.
Sat through something bland and generic.
I don't know what it was trying to be. It took no risks. It didn't do anything. Yeah.
I didn't think we were able to have these kind of films anymore. We've kind of surpassed. We've gone through elevated horror. We've gone through bringing back old school 80s horror films like the Halloween and all that. So we've got to a certain level with horror that I'm surprised that this film got ticked off, and I'm surprised that, I don't know, we allowed it to happen, really.
Yeah, it is a shame because I think it did have quite a lot of promise, kind of offering maybe something new and dabbling back into Asian horror a little bit, but unfortunately it wasn't
but it also kind of felt like it was just a film that should have come out in the early 2000s.
Absolutely.
During all the Asian horror films.
Absolutely. I mean, this is a big question, definitely obviously putting you on the spot. Is there a certain film that you hold up more than any other in terms of in the genre? Do you have a favourite or one that sticks with you?
I have a bunch of favourites. I probably have like 5 top favourites in each subgenre of the horror. Just off the top of my head, I would say Poltergeist, Creepshow, Fright Night. Tends to be all 80s based.
Yeah.
All films that I grew up watching. Like Poltergeist is one of my absolute favourite films. So much so that I'm going to be getting a Poltergeist tattoo, hopefully this year.
Amazing.
Because I'm turning 40 this year, and Poltergeist is celebrating his 40th anniversary. So I'm like, yay, I'm as old as Poltergeist, so I'm getting a tattoo.
As long as it's Tangina just saying, "Don't go into the light," just put the
This house is clean.
just on the taint. This house is clean.
Yeah. You're not the first person to say I should do that.
Well,
I'll prepare the area. It's all good. I'll prepare the area.
Jeez Louise. But I suppose, speaking about ghosts, shall we dive on into the meat of the episode, as you like to refer to it, Liam? Every episode you say meat.
Do I? Maybe that it's always on my mind. That's why.
Absolutely. So obviously we got together and we said that we were going to do this episode. Had either of you seen the original Haunting film before this?
I realised, I thought I hadn't, but I had.
Okay.
When I've been like rewatching it again, I realised I had, and I watched it when I was a kid. Not young. I must have been around, young. I must have been like 13, 14. And I used to be quite a gothy teenager, and I hung around with some quite gothy people. And they were the people who really helped to expand my horror love, because everything I knew at the time was quite, I hate to use the word mainstream, but it was quite mainstream. And they were like, oh, everything you watch is all like bright, bloody, gory, and all this. I was like, yeah, well, that's what I like. And then they're the ones who showed me Bride of Frankenstein for the first time, which changed my life. But then they were like, oh, you need to watch this because obviously you love gay shit. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was expecting when I first watched it, I was expecting it to be like the gayest 60s thing in the world, and obviously it was a lot. It was it's the most subtle horror film I've ever watched. But that's exactly what I loved about it. So from there, I read the book in about 2017 when it was announced that the TV show was going to be made.
Yeah.
So I read the book then. I've read it since. In fact, I was stayed up last night reading it because I couldn't sleep. But
definitely the antidote for that. Just read a ghost story, you'll be fine.
I always get confused when I talk about it, and I've had this conversation with you before. But the year the book came out, the house on
there's so many houses on hills that are haunted.
The house on Haunted Hill came out, but then when The Haunting came out in 1999. There was also a remake of The House on Haunted Hill, and then I get them all confused. So I'm glad we've done this episode, so I can
just to clarify,
differentiate between them all. And I always get 13 ghosts stuck in there as well. That always just ends up coming in. And that's got bugger all to do with it. It's just a house
with ghosts.
But yeah, so I really enjoy it. I do have a standout favourite from all 4 mediums of what's come out, but I have found a newfound love for the 1999 film.
Okay,
but I'll explain more on that in a bit because I have notes.
It needs its moment, absolutely, it does. What about you, Craig? So had you seen the original before we decided to get together?
Yes, it's one of my top supernatural films. It's up there with Poltergeist, The Changeling, and The Conjuring. It's always been a favourite. I think I was trying to rack my brain last night as to when I first watched it. I'm not sure entirely because I have a very bad memory, but I think I might have watched it when I was doing my film course in university. So it would have been 2000s or so, early 2000s. And I think we were shown the film as we were talking about mise-en-scène and camera angles. Enjoyed that straight away, and this vastly became a favourite of mine. So much so, this is why back in '99 I absolutely hated the remake because I held the '63 one with such high regard.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've grown to love aspects of the '99 version since.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it was university or maybe college, possibly college, because that makes more sense in the timeline. Yeah, I think college.
I think it's funny that you mentioned the films like The Changeling and The Conjuring, because I think those films existed because of The Haunting. I think this film walked so that those other films could run, because it's such an exercise in atmosphere. I mean, I have no qualms in saying I'd seen a lot of clips from the film, and I think similar to you, I'd encountered it when we'd done elements of horror and mise-en-scène and stuff when I was studying, because it is such a, I don't know, it's a film that you hold up as like an example for all of these elements.
Yes.
But this was the first time I actually sat down and watched the original all the way through this week, and I was blown away. I absolutely it's fast become one of my like favorite old school supernatural films to check out, and I know I'll watch it again and again for sure.
I come from a different world than you two, so I'm not a filmmaker. I've been involved with lots of films. I'm usually either in them begrudgingly because I don't like to act anymore, or
You're
I like
a great
to
actor though.
I don't like it though.
I don't have a good time.
I never have. I've never enjoyed that. No, I just
surprising.
Like, it's something I'll do for a laugh, but yeah. But obviously, from the writing side of things is where I like to come into it. I really love this adaptation. I really love when a book gets adapted, and more so when it's further adapted, so you can see the changes. But obviously, with this was only released 4 or 5 years after the book's initial release, so the world didn't have its chance to have its horrible, dirty effect on it. But anyway, going to camera angle that keeps sticking out to me. When I think of this film now, all I'm going to think, and it's quite early on in the film, when they first go to the spiral staircase, and Nell's walking up the stairs. And it's not Nell. It's the, what's her name? The companion. That's all she gets called at the beginning.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
In the epilogue. And she's walking up the stairs, and just the camera's on her face. And I was thinking, it was such a cool shot, because like, watching films up from the 60s, that's not really something I'd seen before of that era. She was acting her absolute off. She was incredible.
The acting in this film is phenomenal. I mean, I think there's a lot,
if not melodramatic as well.
Oh, absolutely. But we live for the drama, so we're fine.
Yeah.
There's so much that stands up to this day. Like you said, the camera work, the performances, the writing is spot on. And I mean, I was going to ask you, Liam, and I don't know if you've obviously read the book as well, Craig, but does it stay quite kind of truthful to the book?
It does. It is, of the adaptations, it is the most faithful.
Okay.
There are a lot of moments that are changed, as it is with everything, and there are certain character beats that are a little bit different. Yeah, the way that the film actually does the book justice, because if you read the book, it's really nice, because when you watch the film, it expands on a lot of character beats that are more like toned down in the book. Like, I'll get into, like, we're going to have a whole section at some point on Theo, definitely in terms of Theo has benefited more from being on screen. From the book. I mean, she's incredible in the book, but even more so, especially in the '63 film, her introduction. But it's not. We'll get there. Sorry. I mean, I just want to talk about lesbians.
Well, I think that's why we've done this episode. Absolutely, yeah. Giving an overview then of the story, or at least obviously the story as it's presented in the 63 original. We have Eleanor, played by Julie Harris, who seems to be this lost soul after her mother's passed away. She's living with her remaining family, obviously not really knowing who she is anymore. Her identity's been given over to being a caretaker almost at this point. So she then sees this experiment that's taking place, that's being held by Dr. John Mcguire, played by Richard Johnson, she refers to it as a vacation several times through this film, and I'm like, if this is your idea of a vacation, I have no idea.
Oh my god!
I mean, it's a stunning location. I would love to vacation there. To be honest with you,
that's us.
A nice weekend in that house.
But yeah, this poor woman, she's like, she just wants to get away from it all. I mean, she goes there. She's absolutely blown away by the house. We get this wonderful introduction by Mrs. Dudley, who's played by Rosalie Crutchley, and I mean, I think we need a moment just to talk about Mrs. Dudley in this first film because she's probably the creepiest thing about it.
I had dinner on the dining room sideboard.
Where's Mcguire? I thought he'd have been here before anyone else.
You serve yourselves. I clear up in the morning.
Have you known Dr. Mcguire now?
I have breakfast ready at 9.
No, I've never met him.
I don't stay after 6, not after it begins to get dark.
My only contact with him has been our correspondence about the, quote, experiment, unquote.
I leave before the dark comes, so there won't be anyone around if you need help.
No one can hear you if you scream in the night. Isn't that so, Mrs. Dudley?
No one lives any nearer than town. No one will come any nearer than that. In the night. In the dark.
In the night. In the dark.
In the dark.
She's incredible. I realise in every adaptation as well.
They've done that, haven't they? Yeah.
Fucking,
riff on it.
They've done the riff on that, but Mrs. Dudley is like one of the gay icons in each one.
We stand Mrs. Dudley.
In the 99 film, she's in it for like a minute or two, and she's like chewing that fucking scenery up so much. She's
got like a meat cleaver at one bit, hasn't she? Then she's got like the shawl. She's just, she's everything.
I set dinner on the dining room sideboard at 6. You can serve yourselves. Breakfast is ready at 9. I don't wait on people. I don't stay after dinner, not after it begins to get dark. I leave before dark comes. We live in town, 9 miles, so there won't be anyone around if you need help. We couldn't even hear you in the night.
Why would we?
No one could. No one lives any nearer than town. No one will come any nearer than that. In the night. In the dark.
But like you said, soon after Ellen has arrived at this house, we're then introduced to Theodora. Just Theodora. We don't learn much else about her. She's just Theodora, or affectionately known Theo, who seems to strike up quite a nice friendship with Eleanor, I'd say, or Nell, pretty much straight off. And also, this whole experiment is being overseen by Luke Sanderson, who, was kind of fine.
Oh my god. Back in the day, you'd get the suck really good. Good god.
So, essentially, they're all staying in this house. The doctor's trying to study whether or not that it's haunted, if there's supernatural phenomenon going on. And ultimately, I suppose what's consistent about all 3 adaptations, film-wise or series-wise as well, Eleanor kind of succumbs to the mystique or mysteries of this house and the supernatural elements that are going on. They're all done very differently. Yeah. I think this one by far is definitely like Nell's film. I think the other ones, obviously, they do feature her, obviously the character of Nell quite heavily, but I think particularly with the series, it branched off a lot more. The way that these characters are introduced or how they're related are completely different as well through each adaptation. But with this first one, I really, really liked the setup of it. I thought it was great, and it made sense to me. Which
what I fell in love with immediately is the minute that the lions disappeared, the MGM lion. It's like you immediately get some like narration. Yeah, and I love a bit of narration.
Scandal, murder, insanity, suicide. The history of Hill House was ideal. It had everything I wanted. It was built 90-odd, very odd years ago by a man named Hugh Crane as a home for his wife and daughter in the most remote part of New England he could find. It was an evil house from the beginning, a house that was born bad.
But then we get that title card was sick.
So sick.
When the title card came in, it looked so good. It reminded me of the 60s Doctor Who title card a little bit, but with the effect that they used. But it just looked gorgeous, and then the score was really nice, and then just seeing like the backdrop of Hill House, and we don't get much of that anymore. I do like it when a film starts with titles. I really like something we don't get anymore, and some of the greatest like classic horror films have their opening titles, and it sets you up because you get so gassed from this like sweeping overture and just this gorgeous little title. I mean, the minute that the haunting comes up, I can't imagine how shit scary the title card alone must have been in the 60s.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really.
Well, this is what I love. This is one element that I love about the '99 version. The way they opened that film as well was very breathtaking. Similar to the original, the sweeping over the house. It was very atmospheric. It leaned into the gothicness of the original film, and I was fully set up for this film. And then it went downhill.
I think what all three adaptations do really, really successfully is nail the location, which, I mean, when you've literally got the house.
Especially the interior, though. My gripe with the series is you don't see enough of the exterior. And it's just kind of just pushed into the background, and I think it's CGI. I think there's one scene you see the front of the house in the daylight. But yeah, the location of the original film and even the 99 version, all these sweeping exteriors of the house is fantastical, and you don't get that with the series. The interior of the series is lovely. It's very well done, and the sets that they build is incredible. But there's just not enough of the exterior for me, and that made me a little bit sad.
Well, that's like a fun fact about the '63 film is a lot of the interior, a lot of the scenes, and a lot of the shots actually went on to then inspire the Haunted Mansion.
Welcome, foolish mortals.
That does not surprise me at all.
So they were really inspired by this film. So you'll see a lot of the shots of the interior, and you can look at Haunted Mansion. If you watch the Disney Plus series, you can look at it and you'll see shots. You'll see the original drawings and illustrations. You'll think, oh yeah, they've definitely pulled from The Haunting.
I think that was kind of what stood out to me. Was obviously I came to this film only just this week. But you could clearly see that this film set the blueprint for what a haunted house movie needed to be. With, I don't know, the architecture, the performances, the statues, the lighting, the cinematography, the music, everything. It was all laid out in this film so beautifully. And I mean, it's probably important as well to say that this film was directed by Robert Wise, who also directed West Side Story, The Sound of Music, and Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Absolutely, what a back
resume.
But also, one thing that's been really nice. So I've never really looked into the trivia or any behind the scenes stuff of any of these films before. I wanted to do my homework for this. Every single person who's worked with Robert Wise has said he is an absolute delight to work with. They've never had so much fun or felt so safe or felt so they've never felt so open to explore a role as an actor as they have when they've worked with him. And I think it really shows through in the films you've mentioned, but especially this because it's such an intimate cast as well. It's such a small cast.
Yeah, I mean, the performances are what pull you in, aren't they? And make it believable, I suppose. I think we said, Liam, because we had a brief chat about, obviously, after watching this, I was surprised at just how scary it was. I didn't expect it to still get me as much as it did. I just thought it would have just been kooky, but it genuinely very tense for quite a lot of it.
I'm going to be brave but controversial.
Why would you say something so controversial yet so brave?
And films of this era don't tend to be my favourite. I'm not a Hitchcock fan. I appreciate stuff that is done. I appreciate Psycho for what it did. I've just never, it's just never been my cup of tea.
I was in pure shock. I thought I might have misheard.
And I was expecting it with this, especially going back into it as I haven't watched it in nearly 20 years.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I kind of got Hitchcockian vibes from it. I did feel like it was very...
especially in regards to the camera angles and things like that.
Sure.
We're talking about they're walking up the spiral staircase, and then in Psycho, when you've got, can't remember the character's name, when he's walking up the staircase before he gets kind of stabbed in the face and falls backwards.
Oh yes, for sure. That whole sequence was pretty much frame for frame.
That's what was surprising watching it now, considering that that's not my cup of tea when it comes to horror.
Yeah.
For how much I was actually at some points I was actually like, oh, this is getting really creepy. And I think one big use of that is I've talked about this before, but I really like a subtle scare, and that bulging door I found to be terrifying.
Fantastic.
Absolutely terrifying.
It did such a small thing, just slightly breathing, creaking of the door. And then obviously in 99 you get a massive CGI fist bashing through the door. Very, very common for a remake of that time.
Yeah, absolutely. We
don't want a breathing door, just do something bigger. Yeah, let's have a giant fisting session from the nursery door.
I never thought we'd get onto fisting with Hill House, but there,
I always
there
find
we
a way
are.
to creep it in. I always find a way to creep it in.
I was going to bring it up as soon as I saw Craig, so.
Jeez,
so sweet.
Oh my lord. But yeah, I think my only gripe that I had with the original film was I just felt like the ending was very sudden. Like, I did feel like it was going to end in a tragedy of some sort. And I mean, I think again, this is kind of a common thing with all of the adaptations. They are ultimately, I think, supernatural tragedies of some sort.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But it was very much like,
Trust a woman to point a car at a tree and...
oh, that's it, she's dead. But I think that was the only thing that kind of turned me off a little bit. But it was the
yeah, it just seemed quite sudden, because it seemed to be like get going. You know, she was in the car, you had the doctor's wife running around on the grounds, and it seemed like it was building up to something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she just crashed a car and she's dead. Cool. Bye, Eleanor.
One thing that this film reminded me of something we don't see much anymore is we don't see smoking in films as much anymore. And every scene somebody had a fag on in this. And that was one of my favourite character introductions was Mrs. Sanderson.
Yes, Queen. Yes.
Oh my God, legend.
Her first scene was just there. She's there with a fag, and you just walk in and she's chain smoking and she's just giving a grimace. And she's
she had
like,
the best hairstyle as well.
Yeah, and she's like, she screams money as well. Yeah, I want to be her. I actually wrote down the word
OPULENCE. Opulence. You own everything.
One thing that so as many times as this has been adapted, there are certain elements that pull through each time.
Mm-hmm.
Each time we get some sort of like, however you want to read through it, but the relationship between Nell, Theo, and Luke is always strong. The spiral staircase appears in everyone, and I've got to say, that woman who offs herself at the beginning after she's climbed the spiral staircase, so would I. That looked horrible.
It's horrid.
Like, trying to walk
Absolutely.
up that. I was out of breath watching her.
I got Omen vibes from that, you know, when she was swinging and then her plimsoll just flew off. I was like, oh, that's horrid.
All for you, Damien.
This is it though. Like, there's so many things that have obviously been inspired by this film.
Yeah,
like, it was crazy to see. I mean, like the shots with the mirrors as well. Like, I will say, I did get quite distracted looking to see if I could see cameramen in all the mirrors. But it's so well done. There's the shot where Nell runs at the circular mirror and then the camera pulls back and you see it was a reflection, but it just looked like a distorted corridor to begin with. Oh my God, it's masterful. I mean, I wish films were made like this again. In so many ways.
The one thing that I've written down is saying how much I forgot how much I miss practicality in films, and I don't mind CG. I don't shit on CG when it's done well and it's, you know, and it fits in and it's not, you've not got that
not the Haunting 99 then, yeah.
So but when it's like. It just feels so much more like it always scares me more, or it always has much more of an impact on me. What, as an audience member, to watch something when it's practical, but also like for the actors as well. As an actor, oh God, I don't want to sound pretentious because I'm not.
You do? Oh, Helen is the enemy.
But
as
obviously,
a thespian.
Well, we'll get onto the thespians later. But you want something to react off of. Like when I filmed with you before, Liam, we've filmed in some creepy locations.
This was professional, by the way, Craig, just to let you know. This wasn't Blue Movies.
When we did All Hallows Evil, we were in some like abandoned warehouse. And obviously the creepiness of that gave me something to play with. And then when we did there's one film where I got my face ripped off and we were in your
the Grindhouse one.
Yeah,
I saw that one. Phenomenal acting. Well done, Liam.
Nicely done.
But even then, just having like a set around me that felt lived in. I mean, that one was a house, so of course it felt lived in. But but I think the fifth main character in every one of these is always the house. The house is always like a main character of itself, and even more so in 63, I think, because I found myself when I was watching it just looking at little bits in the background, and there was just bits that I was picking up on, and I was expecting something scary to be happening in the background, but then I remembered it's 63. They weren't.
Yeah, my mind was going like where they take it now. If they were doing the scene, like I was thinking, there'd definitely be something in the background there, or I don't know, there'd be a jump scare.
Well, I mean, you say that, but then we have had a now version. We've had the series, and you know that you were talking about being scared with camera angles and practicality and things like that, and great filmmaking. And I think that's what's so fantastic about the series as well is phenomenal filmmaking. Like I'm not sure which episode 6 or 7 where there's like a 15-minute continuous take.
The Two Storms
and then,
episode,
and then there's and the statues are moving, like,
and all the ghosts in the bloody background,
and then out into the other room, and then the statues move. Like, that's great filmmaking. You know, you didn't need CGI. I think he was playing homage to the 60s version.
Yeah,
to keep it subtle, keep it practical, the majority of it.
Yeah,
and to adhere to great writing and great filmmaking, just like the 60s version.
I do want to address the lesbian in the room. And I do want to talk about Theo. One of the main reasons why I was excited to watch this again is obviously if you want to look up any list anywhere that somebody has like queer horror films, you should check out The Haunting 63 always makes its way on there. And I really wanted to, I'm gay for a living. I really am.
Aren't we all? Get that coin.
But one thing that I love is, obviously I work with queer youth, and a lot of them are just like, I really wanted to get into horror and I want to watch gay stuff. What can I watch? And I was like, I'm going to have to really analyze this for me to be able to turn around and I would like although it's not explicit in the way that it portrays Theo as a lesbian, there's no denying, I think, unless you are, deprived of all senses. And I think what was really cool was I found out that there was actually a scene cut that would have made it more explicit where...
the apartment scene.
Yeah, so there would have been a scene with Theo in an apartment with a lipstick message on the mirror, which predates Drag Race.
Drag Race, absolutely.
And it
I did not think of that.
And it just says something like, I hate you.
And yes, she is a bitch. BICTH. In that order.
And obviously it's very implied that a woman has written that because it's in lipstick, and but going back to the 63 film, the way that it addresses it's all through dialogue and through is it Claire Bloom?
Claire Bloom's playing Theodora in this adaptation.
It's all through Claire Bloom's performance as well, which to me, she was the standout. To me,
I think she's spoken quite fondly as well of getting to play a lesbian so early on in the in the days of film, I suppose. I didn't realise as well she also was in Clash of the Titans, which is another film that I absolutely love. So I was just like, you're just going up in my icon status right here. I've not read the book, but when I've done reading on this, it's always said that it's implied in the book that she is a lesbian, but in the film, the first adaptation, it is a lot more kind of obvious that that's what that is. Obviously you have the scene where she's talking to Eleanor about living with a woman, them not being married, and her living kind of on her own, having her own apartment, that sort of thing. And I think even Eleanor kind of turning around to her and not saying that her being a lesbian is a bad thing, but saying, well, you're unnatural.
Leave me alone. Stop trying to be the center of attention, Nell. Come inside. You revolt me.
Well, can't you take a joke? I didn't know you were serious about Markway.
Of course you did.
Okay. But you shouldn't be allowed to get away with it.
Get away with what?
You're making a fool of yourself over him.
Suppose I'm not, though. You'd mind terribly if you turned out to be wrong for once, wouldn't you?
Oh, you poor, stupid innocent.
I'd rather be innocent than like you.
Meaning what?
Now who's being stupid and innocent? You know perfectly well what I mean.
Is this another of your crazy hallucinations?
I'm not crazy.
Crazy as a loon. You really expect me to believe you're sane and the rest of the world is mad?
Well, why not? The world is full of inconsistencies. Unnatural things. Nature's mistakes, they're called. You, for instance.
I think that there were elements of it, and I think particularly maybe the language of the day, that would have been something that would have been more recognisable.
Speaking of language, there's one of the very early scenes in the film where they're all sat around the dining room table, and they're all like introducing and talking and gassing themselves up. And Nell makes a toast to having new companions, and Theo looks her dead in the eye and says, "Excellent, my new companion." Singular. And she's got full on like flirty eyes on, but that's what she does throughout the whole of the film. If you look at the way that Theo looks at any other character in this film, the way that the tonal shift in her facial expression when she looks at Nell is so different. And the scenes where she's trying to comfort Nell because they're absolutely petrified, and the fact is that these two women were allowed to be like, they're not naked, but they're like in nightwear to be so intimate and close with one another. Together. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think there was actually they were encouraged at the time to actually censor a lot of that. I think they said, obviously part of the reason I think maybe that scene was dropped was because I didn't think they needed to hammer it home, and I think Robert Wise recognised the subtlety and obviously the way that it was told elsewhere. But one of the stipulations by the censor board was like, you can't have these two characters touching each other. But I think the way that it's framed allows it to be interpreted in a way that isn't that, I don't know, it isn't that obvious, but I don't know, as queer people watching it, we recognise these coded characters, and I think this is a step beyond being a coded character for sure. Her constantly saying, like sisters as well, just absolutely made me howl, because I was just like, you know what you're doing. You know what you're saying.
I mean, the subtlety is obviously like a sign of the times, you know, the 60s, obviously. I mean, in Britain, it was still illegal to be gay, but even though it has to be subtle, what I like as well is that Theo is not defined by her sexuality. She just happens to be a lesbian.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if that comes from having to write the character this way because it has to be subtle, but at the same time, it works incredibly for us, even in, 2022, because there's no issue with her being lesbian. It's not written into the script as part of the problem. She's just a character in this haunted house.
Well,
happens to be a lesbian.
And then the fact that she was allowed to be feminine, she was allowed to be. She wasn't bogged down by her sexuality. She was a confident person. She was feminine, and she wasn't predatory as well, which is the main thing. I mean, like, up until then, depictions of queer people in media at that point have either been played for laughs to be the butt of the joke, or had been played to be predatory. But with this one, she was just. She was
just allowed to exist. It
was so weird, because this is what I expect from a modern film to portray a lesbian as. For it to be like, I will say it, for it to be like the Flanagan adaptation of Theo. I mean, yes, that is very much more explicit, but it's brilliant. And what's interesting is each adaptation that's come along has kind of like built on it a little. In 99, that adaptation, although I don't feel like we get any sort of chemistry between Nell and Theo that way, but Theo has a line where she's like, I've got a husband and a girlfriend, and it's like, okay. But and then obviously the 2018 Flanagan adaptation, Theo's explicitly a lesbian.
Yeah, I mean, her first scene, she's in a nightclub and she spots the woman, and then 10 seconds later they're in bed together.
Yeah.
That's her introduction to the series. Can I just go back to, you said Theo about being feminine. I never picked up on that myself, but it's very interesting, because when I was doing some research of like homosexuality in the 60s, and I came across this Christianity Today editorial about what is a homosexual, and impotent men and frigid women, and then feminine men and masculine women. So people are being told, you're a lesbian if you're a masculine woman, or if you're a frigid woman, and then neither of those things are Theo. She's completely feminine, and I think that's clever.
And I could write a whole essay on Theo's wardrobe. And
oh my gosh, I know.
In all three adaptations, but the 63 version, her introduction where she's got this like giraffe print coat on.
Brown cow stunning.
You said giraffe, but I got brown cow.
Girl, no, that's a giraffe. Cows ain't spotted like that. That's a giraffe.
I saw it and I was like, oh, brown cow, stunning.
She looks amazing.
She is incredible. She's definitely, like you said, she's a standout character, and I think it is understated. I think what I respected as well was not only was she bringing this representation of maybe a queer woman at the time, also she was the one who had this supernatural gift. Again, was a completely understated thing. It wasn't like I mean, I did see one of the trailers earlier, and I was actually a bit surprised because I didn't think it fit in with the tone of the film, but it describes her as like a witch woman, and I thought, okay, maybe that was kind of, they're pulling people in with this like idea, but I never thought watching it that she was like, this evil presence. She wasn't predatory, she wasn't a victim by any means, she wasn't like an example of this is what happens to you for being gay or anything like that. She just existed. She cared about characters. I think as well what was interesting about the film and how she fit in there is all the characters seem to be chasing something or each other. So Eleanor's obviously smitten by the doctor and is gutted when she finds out that he has a wife. Luke's obviously chasing
money.
Luke with the money bags is chasing Theo, obviously kind of maybe a bit ignorant to the fact that that she is a lesbian, and then obviously Theo does have some level of connection or thoughts towards Eleanor. So I did find it interesting to see. I was surprised at how small the cast was. I think because obviously in the adaptations going forward, there's always been more people. And obviously in the Flanagan series, they're a huge family. So I was surprised at that, but it was nice to see this kind of, this circle of affection going on. I thought it was lovely.
Something really sweet about this cast as well. Obviously, I spoke earlier about the more praising the director as if he was like God on earth, but what was really cute is what really helped with the performances. The cast got on so well, apart from Julie Harris wouldn't speak to anybody, and Claire Bloom would constantly go up to her and just be like, hi, okay, and she'd shut her down and stuff. So Claire Bloom decided she had enough, and after filming had wrapped, she went over and she was like, what have I done? Like, have I upset you in any way? And Julie Harris explained, she was like, I did that on purpose because Nell comes in as this outsider and she doesn't fit in with anyone.
When we were talking then, I was thinking that could be the case.
And she was like, that's what I want to do. And she was really apologetic. She was like, I am so sorry if that came across as being rude or anything in any way. And then they struck up a really, really beautiful friendship afterwards. And they spoke really highly of one another, like throughout the years afterwards as well. So,
I mean, I personally, I loved Julie Harris in this. I thought she, to say the peaks and valleys that this character has, and obviously how she's going through this ultimately psychosis towards the end. I think she did really, really well. And I know you mentioned obviously the voiceovers and things like that. I absolutely loved that internal dialogue. Thought it was such really an interesting approach. For sure.
Especially like when adapting a book as well. That's one thing. As when you write a screenplay, you've got to think, right, there's all this like internal bullshit going on here. How the hell am I going to portray that? And I think this film handles the internal dialogue really well as well. It doesn't feel like it doesn't fit in or it was thrown in there. And in fact, once it's blended with the score, the actual stuff that's happening, particular moments for me stand out is the bit where she's driving to Hill House. Her little internal dialogue there really works so nicely.
I found that to be quite Hitchcockian as well, with the psycho when she's driving in the car.
Internal monologue. Yeah, it's. I think it's just it's an absolutely gorgeous picture, a gorgeous film, and I think the where it works is in the subtleties that it has.
Yeah, so going from subtle to unsubtle,
literally.
In 1999, this film was readapted. Fun facts about it: Wes Craven was originally supposed to. Had his hands on this, but then decided he wanted to do Scream instead. So
I'm not mad at it.
Good choice.
Not mad.
I did read as well that Stephen King wanted his hand in writing the remake, and it didn't pan out. And then he went off and did Rose Red.
Yeah.
Which I remember seeing that years ago. I definitely want to revisit that series. Obviously, it won't be as good as Hill House, but still.
Fun fact. Steven Spielberg was actually so disgusted by the quality of the finished film that he asked for his name to be removed from the producing credits.
I'm not.
I can understand why.
But so what gets me about this film is there is so much potential with this film, and what got me. So this film I mean, it wasn't a box office flop by any means. It made its money back and then some. A huge chunk of budget on this film went on building the interior of this house.
And that definitely shows. So when I was watching it last night, absolutely stunning. The interior, the exterior, the set design, like, it's incredible. And they make use of it really well as well.
$13 million was spent on the interior of this house, building interior, and you see where the money went. It's a stunning set. I would have loved. It was so big, actually. They had to. It had to be built in like an aircraft hangar.
I mean, I noticed there was one scene where Owen Wilson says he's going to close the door to give Nell privacy, and the door is like 8 Owen Wilsons high. Like, it's absolutely insane. It's mental.
The biggest strengths of the 1999 adaptation are its set and its wardrobe and Catherine Zeta-Jones. Actually, the cast doesn't do a terrible job.
I don't think.
I think they're brilliant. I mean, Lily Taylor. You know, she did a very good version of Nell, I thought.
I really think that really helped when she was in The Conjuring as well. So the 1999 film, for anybody who hasn't seen it out there, is another adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. But because of a rights dispute, they couldn't recreate any shots from the 1963 film. So everything had to be
That's interesting.
New. So
that's why they couldn't have the breathing door then.
No. And
that's why the fist happened,
With what was happening in the original film is a masterclass in subtle horror, and this film, being a product of the late 90s, early 2000s, was like, we just really need to just, like, everything needs to be scary. I mean, in the first film and in the book, you question whether something supernatural is going on or whether it's, you know, psychosis. This film was like, no, it's ghosts. It's ghosts. It's absolutely a ghost. It's weird children who look like cherubs. It's a weird old man who
It's just very odd. I mean, I will say, you know how we've obviously spoken about the first film or the first adaptation being an exercise in subtlety. This seemed to take that and then go, okay, let's just do the complete opposite in every way. It very much reminded me of The Mummy, which obviously came out at the same time. I think The Mummy's far more successful, but I don't know this, and it's funny that you mentioned Haunted Mansion as well in the last one. This reminds me of a theme park ride, this movie, because it's just absolutely
I was going to say like some sort of ghost train or something like that. Just over the top, cheesy, ridiculous.
I think what really let this movie down was obviously the awful CGI for a start. Towards the end of it, it really goes off rail. I mean, we spoke about this giant CGI fist. Statues of griffins decide to come alive, and nothing says terrifying like a griffin.
You know? Well, like we said, obviously, with the original film, you've got just these static statues, which are terrifying in their own right, because the camera will suddenly do like this weird tilt to Brenda's face. But then you've got this one where they literally move in front of you and start. I mean, there's a scene where Lily Taylor literally fights this metal griffin, and it's just what. But then,
I think this is the issue when you give a horror film to like an action director. You know, he's done Speed. Twister. Twister's a fantastic film, but you know, you give this horror to
Jan de Bont,
and it's no wonder it's not scary. He went for action horror as opposed to any other form of horror.
I will say, of all 3 adaptations, it is my favorite house in terms of exterior. Absolutely stunning, gorgeous. Really feels overbearing and terrifying. The interior, there are some like. Although it's wacky, I mean, interior shots of this weird stepping stones that look like ducks on a river.
Oh, I like that. I just don't like the merry-go-round.
I really like that. I went that in my house.
The staircase, the spiral staircase is now like a DNA helix. There's this giant fucking fireplace that has no right to be this big that you can fit, like, you could fit an army in there.
You could lose your head in there.
Did you see what I did there?
It's a scam.
So there we go. So let's get into that.
I will say, I think you've said this is your favourite house. I'd probably say it's my least favourite. Not because I don't think it's gorgeous to look at, but I watching this again today, I really hated the fact that they made it look so scary and so theatrical. Like, whereas I know we spoke obviously about maybe like Scooby-Doo on a previous episode, I think it works there because you're looking for like kooky, spooky kind of vibes. This, I noticed, like, I don't know, I just didn't like that it was made to look so scary. I felt like the original adaptation, and then even obviously the interior in the TV show, was just so much better because it was scarier looking out for it in an almost normal looking space.
Well, there was it's more gothic, isn't it? The series and the 63 film, the house is a lot more gothic.
For sure.
Whereas in the 99, it's I don't know, it's a camp house.
I mean, it's literally when Lily Taylor goes into the she goes into her bedroom and she opens the door, there is like a grimacing like stone gargoyle face right behind her. And I mean, like the fountain that you spoke of, the weird like naked man, I mean, that wouldn't have been built other than to look absolutely terrifying.
It is absolutely, as I said, there are some choices that are stupid, but also actually, Theo's character explains it the best and says it's ripped straight out of the Munsters.
Oh, for sure.
Then,
yeah.
That also leads into an iconic bit of dialogue. And another favourite thing about this film is Theo's wardrobe, again, for me. In particular, she has a pair of Prada boots.
Don't ever step on Gail's shoes!
Why not?
Because Gail's wear Prada shoes!
You idiot!
They're from Milan, Prada, not New York.
Like your boots. You do? Aren't they great? Prada. Milan, not New York. But they're killing me. Hey, small price to pay for such savage kicks.
Which she has to specify. But I love, even though to me, it's the least gay Theo, even though she says she's got a girlfriend. But
well, it's interesting. I mean, I was going to ask you guys what you thought about the fact that, we're led to believe that Theo in the 60s is a lesbian, but then Theo in 99 is bisexual.
I mean, I will say, if I'm being honest, 99, I can remember watching this kind of around the time it was released. I actually genuinely think this is probably one of my first, exposures to a gay character in a horror movie, or even in a film.
Wow.
I know. But I didn't mind it. Like, to me, I felt it's read, like, quite nicely. And I can remember at the time thinking, like, oh, okay. Like, she's with both and it's okay, like no one questions it. So I personally thought that side of things was great, but it's just it's a shame about the rest.
So I was wondering if she's representing bisexuality here, or is Hollywood copping out in making a full-blown lesbian?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I read it as that I got the latter from this. This film doesn't do subtlety in any way, shape, or form.
But it's subtle about her sexuality, which is interesting, because she could have been full-blown Theo, and maybe it would have worked.
But the thing is, though, this script took so much liberty with the source material in the film.
Literally, insert Catherine Tate here.
What a liberty.
I mean, I just want to talk for a moment about that fucking ending. Like, absolutely stupid ending. We get Hugh Crane, although
I kind of like Hugh Crane coming down the staircase.
I will say,
have you got a thing for Hugh Crane? Is that what you're saying, Craig?
No, possibly.
He likes robed gentlemen.
Without this 1999 version, we never would have got Scary Movie 2.
Yes. This is where my issue lies, though, because I mixed the two. So, you know, when she knocked on the door, I fully expected a pair of gold testicles on the door.
Well, that's the thing. When I first saw Hugh Crane, all I could think of was like, that's old Master Kane. And I was like, well, that's Big Daddy Kane.
Big Daddy Kane.
And I was expecting, like, every moment, I was expecting, like, Hanson to come out with his little hand. I was expecting, like...
Check the music room! Check the
music room.
Well, I've completely forgotten about all this. I've not seen Scary Movies films for such a long time, but I think I'm going to be watching part 2 tonight.
Such a good parody of this.
1 and 2 are like two of the greatest. I mean, I can't wait to do an episode on each one's
just Brenda.
Just
Brenda.
But what I love I think Scary Movie 2 actually makes a better adaptation of The Haunting of Hill House than this. I think it's quite scary.
It does have some moments for sure.
But one bit that gets parodied that I really liked was, we talk about, like, the one thing I did like about this was the red footprints about the house, and then the welcome home Eleanor, and all that was nice. But the ending came out of nowhere, where for some reason Nell is now the ancestor of Ukraine's.
She's wearing the same necklace. It all makes sense.
Which came out of nowhere, and then at the end.
Well, I think I don't think it so much came out of nowhere, because they do reference in '63 version of like Nell coming home. So I think he was trying to like build on that theory, more so like the series builds on that, because it is actually their family home. So I think it's gone from Eleanor being called back home.
Yeah. The bit where she turns into supernatural Mother Teresa, though, it's just like...
what does she scream? I can't remember. I am home, or something. She's screaming at Ukraine.
Couldn't tell you. It's just when she's like, no! And I'm like, oh yeah, you really told him.
It's when Owen Wilson's head comes off, and like Catherine Zeta-Jones is screaming, and then Nell just goes, oh no. As his head plops in the fireplace.
Oh well, we get 2 Owen Wilson wows in this film as well. We get 2 wow. But the one thing I really did like, I liked the fact that the house was a bit more evil. I didn't like certain bits. So when the house, it looks like what they should have kept was, there's a scene where these 2 windows look like eyes, and it at the beginning it looks great. You think, oh, that's really creepy, but then CG comes in and they make it frown and grimace and blink, and you're just like, oh, it was so close.
I suppose they haven't done that with any of the Amityville remakes. You know, they've gone from the subtlety of the eyes to making it grimace.
Has Amityville in Space come out yet?
I think it might be.
I believe it's out. It's not canon.
I'm going to watch that tonight.
next episode.
I mean, it looks The thing is, there's so many Amityville not spin-offs, but like non-canon films, because obviously Amityville, any filmmaker can use that word. But you've got some people who actually think it's part of the franchise, and they'll be going to check it out and sorely disappointed, I presume.
I don't think we're going to be disappointed with Amityville in Space.
It's a great poster, though. I love the poster.
Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
One thing, so another thing that I think the 99 film does well is, again, there are some moments where the score's used really well. And apparently, so Wise in the 63 would play these sounds like practically to get the best reaction from the actors. So when you see Nell and Theo in bed terrified, it's because they've never heard these sounds before, and they're like, oh God. They did the same with this, but all of a sudden they were like, no, let's just f*** it up in the next scene where
it's just I don't know. It is a shame, because I think it's interesting to find out that they couldn't obviously take direct copies of certain things, because I mean there's a shot that stands out for me completely in the original, you know, where it's looking down on Nell and the camera sits down, and even now I'd be like curious to know how they did that. I feel like they maybe fast forwarded footage, or maybe like did it like almost stop motion in some ways. I don't know. There's just like none of that with this. To say how beautiful the sets look, to say the cast that they have is kind of stellar. I mean, they're all names, and I think that was the thing, wasn't it? I mean, it went up against Blair Witch, didn't it, this summer for horror films? So, I mean,
do you remember when it was released? And I was reading about it, and Catherine Zeta-Jones was talking about how scared she was being on set. I presume, obviously, that's just, sound bites to get you excited.
I was terrified.
Ooh,
well, I watched the making of last night on YouTube, and it's hosted. It's hosted by Catherine Zeta-Jones, and she comes on.
She sent that to me. I need to watch that.
She comes on, and she's like introducing the film, but it's like against like. There's a glass of red wine. It's the fire's lit, and she's been like really sultry and stuff to the camera. And I'm like, I don't know what they were paying you just to do this bit to try and sell the shit out of this shit film. But
because I mean, she was like peak. I'd probably say Catherine Zeta-Jones around this point. She was.
Yeah, she was, and she was just about to start in Chicago. So at this point, I believe she had done.
She was in Zorro and stuff, hadn't she?
Yeah,
and Entrapment. When was that?
Yeah,
I just remember Entrapment and her ass, basically.
Who doesn't?
Fantastic. I mean, there's a scene in this film. There's a camera shot in this film, and it's one of the first times that we meet Theo,
where it just goes on the boobs,
pans it on the tits. And I thought, oh, they're going to make it that it's Nell staring.
I thought it was supposed to kind of be Nell's point of view.
Nah.
I don't know, I got a vibe. But also late
90s gratification. Yeah. But anyway, I want to put a pin in this one because I don't want to give it the energy. But I do now want to talk about one of Mike Flanagan's masterpiece. And to say that is the big deal because there is a long list. I didn't realise how much I loved this until I watched it the second time around. The first time around, I thought, oh, this is really fun.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Second time around, once you know which beats that you're looking for in emotional moments. Oh, I was devastated. Like, I haven't watched it this week in preparation for this because I've had a busy week and I've needed to not be emotional.
I was going to say, yeah, you need the emotional headspace.
This one takes, I think, the biggest liberty with the source material, as in they change the dynamic. People are related. You've got two different stories going on.
Well, it's the Crane family
cleverly,
now.
So captures the soul of the original. Yes, he changes the story and the characters, but the nuances, the atmosphere, just the soul of the original film. He managed to capture that. Quite similar to what he does with Dr. Sleep, which we can talk about later on. But
the one thing that I have found that I love about Mike Flanagan, when he's adapting something, he will find a way of making changes to it that, one, makes sense, bring a new dynamic to something. I mean, Mike Flanagan is that much of a genius that he managed to get Stephen King to rethink his views on Stanley Kubrick's Shining.
Yeah, getting the two worlds to me is
that's how
insane.
Incredible. Like, it's not a Mike Flanagan podcast, but it might be one day, because I think the work that he does, especially in the horror genre, is he's reignited a fire in it, because this The Haunting of Hill House 2018 actually took the world by storm. I remember everybody talking about it, and
it was everywhere, wasn't it?
You had those like clickbaity articles like, "This is the scariest thing you'll ever see," and I was like, it's not, but it's one of the. I think it's one of the greatest horror TV shows that we've had, and I don't mean that to be hyperbole. I really do think it's one of the greatest, because
for sure,
not only does it pack in the gothic horror, the emotional beats and everything, but also I feel like it brought something new to the table, and it took so many risks. And in particular, the Two Storms episode with that continuous it's so, just to look at it, it's gorgeous.
I think what I really found so pleasantly surprising, because it had been a good while since I'd revisited 99, The Haunting. I'd obviously not fully watched the original 63 version. So revisiting then the series and kind of doing them all in succession, it was just so lovely to see the dialogue, and the way that they reinterpreted it. So we still had this kind of Mrs. Dudley monologue, but in this time it was Mr. Dudley saying it because he was worried about his wife. Nell delivers the lines at the end saying, "Out there in the dark," and it was just all of these moments. And like you said, the spiral staircase was there, the hanging was there, the house being such a character, and I honestly I can't fault it. I think it's pretty much a near perfect kind of TV series, and what you do with it.
The TV show is, to me, it literally takes something from the 3 previous entries beforehand. It takes a lot from the book. A lot of the dialogue is lifted from the book directly. Then it takes what made the 63 film so groundbreaking and so successful. It took all that, brought it, and then even 99, it took that. We are going to add supernatural elements to it. We are going to make it so something supernatural is obvious that is happening. But he decided to do it. He was like, but what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to slap you over the face with it in the way that...
I think it was coupled with mental health issues, though, and alcohol abuse and drug addiction, and all of these things were going on in the background. And I mean, I found that approach quite interesting, that this house, it wasn't necessarily that it was haunted in a way that was like a traditional haunting. Like it wasn't necessarily like loud bangs in this series, and it wasn't necessarily jump scares. It was things in the background, or it was the house making you see things that you suddenly snapped out of when it was too late.
I will say though, you say about jump scares. Now jump scares don't get me, because I can see them coming.
Yeah.
This show has one jump scare where they're in the car.
I don't know. I'm telling you. I'm trying to tell you.
I don't need to hear your excuses.
I'm not making excuses.
Bullshit.
I saw.
Ah, shit!
And
I can remember seeing this on Gogglebox, and literally every group of people on Gogglebox shot themselves. It was brilliant.
I feel really sorry for my cat. He was sat on my lap when I last watched this. Even though I knew it was coming, I didn't know exactly which bit it was. She was sat on my lap. She was on the other side of the room by the time I finished that completely. But again, that's what I really appreciate, that he isn't like, he's not one of those people who's like, oh, I'm not going to do jump scares because, you know, it's like I'm too above that. It's like, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it in a way that makes sense. I'm not going to like slam my hand down on a piano and that's what you get.
It didn't lose the atmosphere. I think that's what was good, and to maintain that over 10 episodes as well, and weave this incredible story. I mean, again, credit to the performers involved in this, because essentially, obviously, you've got these two separate timelines going on, haven't you? But it was one of these examples. It kind of reminded me a bit of how much we said we loved Yellow Jackets, and obviously the casting with that, like the family, like old and young, are just spot on. Like, you know immediately who these characters are through and through.
Well, I think that the actors are one of the best parts about the 2018. I mean, Mike Flanagan does a Rob Zombie and does cast his wife in anything, but the difference being
she can act.
Kate Siegel is an incredible actress.
Yeah,
the first thing I ever saw in was another Mike Flanagan thing I saw in Hush, and I fell in love with that film. But she's been in near enough everything he's done since, and he does kind of use the same actors in everything he does. That's not to say that he doesn't diversify things and get other people in, but he's got those core performers in it, and they are some of, like, again, Kate Siegel's performance in this as Theo is played brilliantly. The use of her gifts in this, her supernatural gifts, are so much more apparent, and we know that they're happening.
They were pretty much non-existent, weren't they, in the 99 film? Like, I don't think at any point
they didn't really exist at all. No,
and I mean, obviously I know that we do have that Theo's tuned into stuff in the original, but with this I absolutely loved the fact that it's like through touch, and it's maybe something she's inherited.
A fantastic episode.
Yeah, I mean, where she like obviously finds out the whole thing about one of the kids she's treating as well, and all of that. Like, I can remember that. I don't know. There's so many standout moments of this show.
Well, this is. I was saying to Craig last night. I was saying I want a spin-off show that's just Theo's lesbian psychic detective agency. I'd watch the absolute shit out of that.
I could get on board with that, I think.
Some interesting stuff then about the 2018 adaptation is, obviously, we were talking about Mike Flanagan works with a lot of the same people now. He did Dr. Sleep, which we'll talk about a little bit about in a second, and he got Carl Lumbly in that, who's an incredible actor, especially a voice actor. He was in an episode of Grey's Anatomy with Loretta Devine. She plays Adele Weber. Loretta Devine was actually one of the original Dreamgirls as well. That got adapted into a film in 2006, I believe, starring Beyonce in one of the lead roles.
I know where this is going.
Funnily enough, Beyonce was in a successful girl group with the one and only Kelly Rowland.
Friday!
It took a while, but we got there.
This film is only 6 degrees of separation away from Kelly Rowland.
I mean, is there a way that you would shoehorn Kelly Rowland into this? Because I mean,
every adaptation we've had of this is very white, so we wouldn't. I just feel like it's very white. I think she would have made a great Mrs. Dudley.
Oh, 100%. That's where I'd put her.
Absolutely.
She'd just be like in the dark, and then she'd just like sashay out of the room.
You were saying how much you love the Dudleys. I love in the series how much of a backstory they're given.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and especially that episode, where Mr. Dudley's talking about Mrs. Dudley and how the house affects her. And then obviously we've got the twist at the end. You find out that Luke's seeing this little Abigail, and she's not a ghost. She's the child of the Dudleys.
Yeah.
And then what happens after that is heartbreaking.
It is.
I think it's fantastic that he fleshed out the Dudleys' characters, even though what he did to them is very cruel.
I'm going to go on record and say this, but I quite famously don't like children. Every single kid actor in this, I think, knocks it out of the park.
Absolutely, yes.
Young Luke is incredible. I mean, that kid's gone on to been in various things, but now he's like...
Yeah, he's in The Conjuring 3, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He's potentially going to be... Well, he already plays Billy, who's the Scarlet Witch's gay son. So, yeah.
Ooh, I didn't know that. Come on.
Yeah,
and
I loved
obviously
him in One
Theo,
Division.
the child Theo, McKenna Grace, who's just in absolutely everything and has been since she was a little girl, and just keeps getting better in everything that I see her in.
For sure.
She's like one of my villains. Like,
I think
if I had an arch villain, it'd be her.
McKenna Grace.
And it'd be her. And do you know the girl who... Have you seen Wish Upon?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Oh, Joey King?
Joey King, yeah.
She's another one.
Yeah, I see it.
Just
incredible actresses.
In the last 5 to 10 years, I've seen them everywhere. That's why they're my...
I mean, I've got to say, I think my standout kid actress is Violet Mcguire as Nell.
Oh,
I mean,
my days.
She kicks off that whole monologue where she asks, obviously, if her mum would wake her if she was in a dream where...
What if I dream that you sent us away into the dark and we get hurt? Really hurt? And what if I'm so sad and scared of the dark out there that I put poison in me for years and years until my blood turns into poison and my heart breaks right in half and I can't feel anything happy. So I can't stand it anymore and I have to die. And time on a silver table. Is my jaw wired shut? Would you wake us up from a dream like that?
I can remember seeing the trailer for that because I can remember the marketing for this series was absolutely spot on. I can remember there was trailers in the cinema, there was posters everywhere of like the silhouette of the bent neck lady, and like everyone wanted to know what was going on with stuff. But yeah, that whole, I think Mike Flanagan is definitely an actor's director. Like everything I've seen him do, he manages to weave these absolutely gorgeous monologues into them.
Well, he's just a fantastic writer, isn't he? He's not just a good director and a good filmmaker.
For
you know, I want to go and read a novel of his. He's very much Stephen King.
Yeah,
Stephen King
I think that's why they gel so well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people complained, I think, about Midnight Mass, which he did, saying it was like one monologue to another monologue to another monologue. I thought it was stunning. I thought it was incredible.
Yeah. The thing is, the monologues aren't there just for the sake of it. You know, the monologues give backstories to these characters. You know, any normal kind of film would just, you know, visualize that, or not even include a backstory, because in a film you haven't got time to include such many backstories. And I think that's what's fantastic about his monologues. They're not literally not there just for the sake of it. They're there to be written into the script because the character that he's writing about is important to the story of the script.
That's another big strength of Flanagan, is no character feels like they're throwaway characters. I mean, we've spoken about the Dudleys being a big example of that. In adaptations that have come before this, they are quite throwaway characters who just appear just to be creepy or whatever, whereas this, they are so fleshed out.
And they're part of the story, they're part of the history of Hill House, which is important.
I messaged you earlier, Liam, and said, I have no qualm saying this, I was in tears because I just watched the last episode again. And it is that bit, you know, where old Mr. Dudley carries Mrs. Dudley in and lets her like pass away. And then she's there with the baby and Abigail comes and it just sends me over the edge.
It's absolutely gorgeous. If anyone's listening, and we've kind of spoiled it for you, but if you haven't checked out The Haunting of Hill House, it's available on Netflix. Netflix, you can sponsor us if you want for that shout out. I don't know if you've got the money for it, but
I call shade.
Oh, shade. I think definitely what's good about these and all these adaptations is you could have seen one of them, but you've still not seen the rest of them, because they are all different in their approach to it. And I think that's what's really cool about all of them.
But I reckon what will happen now, because obviously things get adapted 1,000,001 times. I feel like if anybody were to do this again, they've got a really big tough act to follow now. Because
I don't think they should. It would just be ridiculous. If anyone's going to give money behind somebody to adapt this, then they're just wasting money.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
So the 2018 TV show, again, it takes a lot of liberties with the book. It isn't completely faithful. But what it does do is it gets the characters spot on. So I feel like whoever wants to adapt this next is going to have a lot of trouble now. We've seen to me, the pinnacle of what this could be. And then anything that comes after, it feels like it's going to fall short. And that's, I mean, I might be pleasantly surprised one day and somebody may do it, but
I think it is the unique approach there, because obviously we got the follow-up after this, just to briefly mention The Haunting of Bly Manor, which is based off Turn of the Screw, but also around the similar time we got the film The Turning. So they were both going off the same source material. I'm not saying that I think that the second season, because I do think The Haunting has become kind of an anthology of sorts now. I don't think it was as impactful as Hill House in Bly Manor.
No, I wasn't a fan. But then I don't think it's a very good source material. I don't even think Turn of the Screw is a great book, to be honest with you.
No,
The Innocents adaptation is very good, because it's, you know, it's very atmospheric, it's very creepy. But people keep adapting this time and time again, and you know, it's at the end of the day not very good, I don't think.
it's the whole Shakespeare thing for me. Like the more adaptations of things that we get, is you can tell this story 1,000,001 times, but like people know it, and if it's not like amazing at 100% of the time with each one, then people just don't want to see it. Like, I walked past somewhere the other day and they were like, "Oh, there's a new Romeo and Juliet film out," and I was like, what else can you do with it at this point? What else can you do with it? And but it's, I'm not going to go into Shakespeare.
I am excited, because obviously I know in production at the moment they've got the Fall of the House of Usher adaptation, and that has some of the returning faces. It's got obviously Mike Flanagan again at the helm. I know there's been some controversies about certain people being involved and now not involved, but I'm happy to see where it's going with stuff, and
Mark Hamill's in it.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, Luke Skywalker's in it. It's going to be great.
Mark Hamill's in it, and also, more importantly, Rahul Kohli is coming back.
Oh yeah!
Oh my lord!
What a man!
Holy moly!
Oh god, yeah. Unspeakable things, unspeakable. We'd have to censor a lot of this podcast if we went into that. But yeah, I'm really excited. I think what excites me the most is Edgar Allan Poe. Obviously, his work are incredible. They don't get adapted as much nowadays. I think one of the best adaptations of a Poe story happened in The Simpsons. I really love their take on the Raven. I thought it was brilliant. But yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens. And if there's anybody that I trust with something, it's Flanagan.
I think that's it. Knowing it's in his hands is
the work that he did on Doctor Sleep. The fact is, he managed to, I said it before, he managed to convince Stephen King to look at Kubrick's Shining, which he hated, in a different light, because King loves Doctor Sleep. And obviously his adaptation, not only it's a sequel to the book and the film at the same time. It's brilliant. If you've got a chance to watch it out there, watch the director's cut.
Stunning.
Well, that just shows how phenomenal he is of a writer. You know, he managed to take the original book, managed to take the Doctor Sleep book, managed to take the original film, even managed to incorporate some of the elements of the Shining series. You know, he put it all into one film. You know, if you've seen all these different versions, if you read all the books and you've seen the different versions of The Shining, then you're watching this and thinking, wow, how has he managed to incorporate all this yet still make
masterful.
It absolutely fantastical?
And that's exactly what he did with The Haunting of Hill House as well. So I'm excited to see anything else that he does. I know that he's also got another series in the works at the moment. I've forgotten the title of it.
Midnight Club or something?
Yeah, the Midnight Club, and it's about it's set in like an old folks' home, and they all come together and tell ghost stories.
I'm excited to see what he does. I think the only thing that I'm kind of a little bit gutted about is I know that he was attached to maybe adapt Halloween at one point, and I would have loved to have seen his version of that. Not that I'm not happy with.
I'm not sure how that would work. I mean, Michael Myers can't really do a monologue.
Well, I'm sure he'd have made it work somehow.
Just stands there for 10 minutes.
Do you know who could do a monologue though? Freddy Krueger could do a monologue. I would like to see Flanagan take on
that's
Elm
a good
Street.
Call.
Or I know that it's already in production, but his Hellraiser would have been if he was to do Hellraiser.
By the way, I'm very much looking forward to Bruckner's Hellraiser. So much. We've
got a lot to be excited about as horror fans. I'm happy.
And we've already, this year alone, I mean, we're now in May, and so far we've had we've had some fun this year. There are some great originals at the moment over on Shudder. I'm trying to make my way through as many as possible, just because I give a shout out to Shudder near enough every episode, so they should sponsor us. But yeah, there's some great stuff happening over on Shudder, and yes, in the UK we don't get half as much as they do in America, but there is some really cool stuff happening out there. We've had Ty West's X this year, which I've seen a second time now, and I've enjoyed it a lot more the second time than I did the first time.
I need to give it a second viewing because expectations are a bitch. Basically, they can completely spoil your viewing pleasure.
For
and
sure.
The first time I watched X, I'm still sitting on it. I still don't quite know.
But what about the film?
Yeah, just waiting for one of you to chime up.
Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it's just very well done. But it's just a silly film. It's a silly premise.
I think going into it knowing how silly it will be, you'll appreciate it a lot more. Cause I think I was the same as you, Liam. I didn't leave hating it, but I did leave somewhat I think where I wanted to be.
It was better than the other film that we went to see together. But yeah, and then this year,
what was the other film?
Five Cream. I don't know. I think you were a fan of Scream 5, weren't you?
Yes, I quite enjoyed it.
Again, on repeat viewing, I think it's better.
You know, Billy the Ghost is
that was my main gripe. Yeah.
That's
how you don't do ghosts.
That's just one element. I didn't mind that. I mean, it was a fun film. I had a good time, and that's
a haunting.
Enjoy
I'd quite like Billy to come and haunt me. What a man! So I just thought it'd be nice now. If we just any final thoughts on this franchise? Well, it's weird to call it a franchise, but I suppose at this point,
I mean, do we have favourites out of all of the adaptations? Do you have a favourite, Liam?
Yeah, so mine would be Flanagan's 2018. That's not to discredit the 63 film whatsoever, because it is gorgeous, but I am such a sucker for that TV show, and it's like in my list of like top TV shows now.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. What about you, Craig? Do you have a favourite?
I'd probably say the 63 version, because it's just nostalgic and it's been with me since I was younger. Followed by Flanagan's adaptation. And if anyone hasn't seen the series, I would definitely suggest watch the 63 version followed by the series in one binge event.
Oh god,
because the first time I watched the series, I remembered the film and I was like, that's cool, look, the turning of the knob and the spiral staircase and the camera towards the wallpaper with a little face in, all these little things that they added. But watching it for this podcast, the film first, then the series, I had a different experience. There were so many things that I missed first time around that I picked up on this time around, and it just made the pleasurable experience even more pleasurable.
No, I think, that's an absolutely killer double feature. I mean, it's a double feature with 10 episodes of one film, but we'll go with it. I think I've probably got to say I favour the TV series, and I think it's only because it does have 10 episodes, so you have that period of time to expand on that story and get to know these characters. And I do find it's such an emotional roller coaster. You care about them, you love them. I can remember when I finished watching it the first time, I just wanted more. Like, I was actually genuinely upset. Like, there was no more of this story for me to consume.
Well, that's why I wanted from series 2. I didn't want Bly Manor. I wanted a continuation of Hill House. There are so many ghosts in that house.
For sure.
You don't know anything about. Even the main ghosts, William and Polly Hill. In the films, quite a lot about Hugh Crane and his history. You don't know anything about William and Polly. Where are they monologue? Where are the monologues from all the ghosts in the house?
I want to know about the guy,
the ghosts.
The clock guy with the handlebar mustache, because I feel like
he's obviously a porn star ghost.
Yeah. He's absolutely. I
also just want to mention how I enjoy Theo's queerness in the series. Yeah, as I said earlier on, the first time we see her, she's 2 seconds later in bed with a woman, and then it's not even just cut and dry. I've just slept with some random stranger. There's an episode where they have a conversation and there's a massive connection where Theo spills her heart to this girl.
Yeah.
And then I can't remember which episode, but there is an episode where Theo's younger, and it's kind of like a coming out episode.
Yeah.
So you've got all these kind of things that they never mentioned in the original film or the 99 version. She's out, there's no drama, the family know about everything.
Yeah.
Again, it's just her being a lesbian is not an issue, and the scenes where she's having sex is very hot, even from a gay man. I absolutely thought they were extremely hot.
I completely agree, and I think as well her powers are a nice like duality for her sexuality, like her coming to terms with her powers and actually being able to touch people and be open with people. It's the same with her actually realizing, do you know what, I am a queer woman and this is who I am. I love the scene at the wedding. The scene at the wedding absolutely gets me when is it Shirley?
Shirley, for Shirley Jackson.
She's like, oh my god,
it'll drop in a second.
Love that, absolutely love that.
So now we've come to like a nice natural close to the main topic. Let's just go on to our recommendations this month. I don't mind kicking us off because I've got two books for you this month. The first one is going to be The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson.
Which I feel like want to read.
If you are somebody who's you've not really read horror before, you've consumed it on TV or film or whatever, you've not really consumed horror in books, it's a really good first entry into that because it's not too scary. I mean, it has its moments, but it really, at the time that it really focuses on more of a human experience. But it's a really good, like, little tiptoe through horror. But my second one, keeping on like a haunted house theme, would be Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. Now, Grady Hendrix has quickly become one of my favorite horror authors. He's got a writing style that blends humor, camp, and horror into this one gorgeous little package. Now, Horror Store, if you were to read it, it looks like an IKEA manual. It's amazing.
I love that.
But also, it's a haunted house film set in well, it's not IKEA because copyrights, but it's set in an IKEA.
IKEA. It's an IKEA, not an IKEA.
It's like a haunted house book set in an IKEA is absolutely like insane to think of, but it works so well. It's got really great comedic moments. It's genuinely terrifying, so good. Just like everything that Hendrix writes, it's always got its tongue firmly stuck in its cheek, and it's one of those where if you get the physical book itself, it reads like a manual. It's so funny.
That's
like
so cool.
As the chapters go on, each chapter is named after a piece of furniture that's in the IKEA book.
I mean, that's horrifying enough, to be honest.
It starts off with an instruction manual for like shelves, a bookcase, and then it's like a torture rack. And it's amazing. So that's Horror Store by Grady Hendrix. Yeah, if I've spoken about it before, I do apologise, but I don't think you have, but I think he seems to have like the perfect balance of, I don't know, taking a subgenre of horror and combining it with like something in pop culture we all recognise.
The author that did My Best Friend's Exorcism.
Yes.
Yes, cool. Yeah, I read that one. Enjoyed that.
Yeah. It's also done We Sold Our Souls, which is a rock group who one of them sells their soul to the devil. It's done the Final Girl Support Group, done the Southern Housewives Guide to Slaying Vampires. It's just an absolutely phenomenal author.
I think he's on the way to getting a lot of his work adapted, isn't he? I know that the Final Girl Support Group's been sold, so I'm excited to see this.
Best Friend's Exorcism has also been sold, I believe.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that.
So, yeah. I can't wait to see. I really hope his career is as big as like King, Barker, Horowitz.
I think he's on the way. Like, I mean, there's constantly new material coming from him. So
absolutely deserves. So yeah, they're my two recommendations this month. We'll go to Craig and then Liam. We'll finish with you, Liam.
Always.
Well, I'd say since we're talking about fantastic horror shows, if anyone hasn't seen them, I would direct them into Bates Motel and The Exorcist. If you've seen season 1 of The Exorcist, absolutely fantastic.
Anything with Gina Davis, I'm in. So
exactly. And halfway through the series, you have this amazing connection to the film, which basically brings it into being a sequel. Phenomenal.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but the big reveal in that show had my jaw like
absolutely
on the floor.
Yes.
The sexy priest in it also has my jaw on the floor.
Oh yes.
Bates Motel though is also incredible. To give that a
I thought that was great, because that was both, a prequel that ended up being an adaptation by the time they got to season 5, and they kind of adapted the Psycho film and replaced Marilyn Crane with Rihanna.
Yeah, that was an interesting choice. I think Kelly Rowland would have worked better.
And then the twist.
Did you say
Kelly Rowland on that as well?
Yeah, so Rihanna plays Marion Crane in season 5 of Bates Motel.
I've not seen it.
Yeah. Wow. She comes in, has a... I mean, I like
Rihanna,
the twist on it.
You have to wait
Rihanna.
5 seasons before she comes in.
Yeah.
But she's
I think that
great.
was
and
what
then
was great
it's
about
not exactly the Marion Crane that you remember either, because it's a nice little twist.
I'm excited.
You knew starting that show, it was ultimately going to try and work its way to the shower scene. And like it become like the film.
And what they did with the show,
yeah. Also, Vera Farmiga, just...
Oh my god, I'm in love with her. She's amazing.
Who does she play? Mrs. Bates?
Yes. Norma.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm watching.
She's absolutely fantastic.
She's another one of
She's
those
the reason to watch
actresses
it,
where I could watch her in anything.
She is literally incredible.
In fact, I have sat through stuff that isn't that good just because she's in it. But
it's it's absolutely phenomenal. I will also say Max Therio, if that's how you say his name. Is probably one of the nicest looking men I have ever had the pleasure of seeing.
Yeah.
So
Norman's brother.
Yeah, is chef's kiss. He's fine. He's fine. But yeah, great recommendations. I think. Well, I'm happy to take the torch then and wrap things up. I've got a couple of... There you go, Liam. See, Liam's just found out who I'm talking about.
But I know who he is. He's been in things.
You wish he'd been in things. I'm going to wrap things up. I've got a couple of recommendations, and they are both TV shows as well. So I'll keep the horror theme, and then I'll go off kilter at the end. But the new season of Inside Number 9 has just started again on BBC One.
Oh, I need to catch up on that. I'm on
BBC
like
Two
season
now,
3.
Yes. Well, you've got so many episodes to catch up on.
Yeah.
It's great. Again, if no one's watched it, it's just a phenomenal show. Anthology style in nature. Every episode is different. I mean, like now, for example, you could just watch the couple of episodes that are out in season 5 and be fine. I think it's Reece Shearsmith and Steve Pemberton, the two guys running the show. And
Reece Shearsmith's such a little horror nerd as well. I love him.
Kind of have a bit of a weird crush on him. I'm not gonna
it's not
lie.
weird at all. He's so sexy.
I don't know what it is because I don't know. It's just like, you know, when something clicks and you're like, I don't know why it's clicked, but I'm aroused.
Even as the old man in League of Gentlemen, I'd let him.
You're
hit
my
it.
wife now, Dave. It's amazing show. I love that because it's not necessarily horror, but it's like dark humor sometimes with a horrific twist. The other thing I think, which we've all checked out as well, and I think it would be important for us to talk about on the podcast, would be Heartstopper on Netflix. That would be another great thing I'd recommend.
Such joyful watching. And realistic in today's terms, but it's not really for us. It's for 10, 11, 12-year-olds. It's just so sweet. So sweet.
I do agree. I think
it's
it's idealistic, but it's... it made my heart so warm.
As somebody who works with queer kids for a living, getting to see their reaction to it has made the show even better for me. I mean, I enjoyed the show watching it, but knowing how much it means to the youth of today, especially showing the normality of being queer, showing that not all of our stories have to end or be tragic. Not everything that we do is completely surrounded by... I mean, yes, the reality is there's still a lot of hate out there, but I feel like stories that don't have to show that, you know, queer joy is just as important as queer tragedy is. That's why I really
100%.
appreciate this. And
Absolutely.
I just want to shout out to the young actors in that as well, who have done a phenomenal job.
I think what got me about this show was just the fact that, and similar, obviously, going back to our themes of talking about the character of Theo in all of these adaptations, these characters were just queer and just existed, and it dealt obviously with a lot of issues. It was perfectly family friendly, so I think it's the perfect space for a lot of families to be having these really important conversations. I think as well, I really identified a lot with it. I mean, I actually, you know, the scenes like where Nick's talking to his mum about him being bi, and even down to the point of him watching Pirates of the Caribbean and kind of going, Keira Knight is nice, but also Orlando Bloom's kind of nice. I can remember seeing that film. I got the postcards from that movie in 2003 and they were up on my wall, and I can remember looking at both of these pictures of these two and being like, why do I like both of these? Like, what's wrong with me? And for her to turn around and like say, it's okay, you can like girls as well, or like, you don't have to say you like girls, sorry. It was such an important note. I mean, yeah, just Queen. I can't talk about it enough. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, I'd really like to read the graphic novels now.
So I'm a huge comic book nerd. Not my cup of tea when it comes to comics because I'm a superhero boy. But I've read them. They're really nice and they are really like easy to read. So if anybody does struggle reading comics or graphic novels or anything of that medium, they are really easy to read, and that comes from it's got really nice simplistic drawings, really cute, and the language isn't too heavy or too wordy. But you can actually buy a novella that Alice
Oseman.
I was going to say Ozyman then, but yeah. But yeah, she's also drafted a short novella that kind of like tells the story, but you can read it rather than having to.
Interesting.
So that's you can consume it that way if you are reading it in a prose medium instead. But yeah, that's a great recommendation. Especially, I just feel like it's an important thing for people to watch, whether you're queer or not as well.
That's it. I mean, yeah, for whether or not it's people maybe understanding friends or family that they have that are maybe queer, or I don't know, just educate yourself.
This is so. I have this philosophy in life, and I'm sorry to get on this, but do you know when people are, I don't know why I need to learn about that. It's like, do you know when like cis straight men are like, why should I have to learn about periods? I'm like, well, what if one day you happen to be a single parent and you have a child who menstruates and they've got no one else to turn to but you, and then you can't give them those answers. So it's the same with this. Like, what if one day you happen to be that person that somebody is comfortable enough to come up to you and come out to you and tell you their truth, and you don't know what to say, what to do. That's what. I'm not going to go on. It's not going to get ranty.
Well said.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think it ties in with the whole theme of this episode. I mean, the representation of people in any type of media is important. It has been for decades. So it's nice to see it carrying on. And also, I hope there's a season 2.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I think I've heard there's going to be, or there's rumblings and stuff, because it's at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, there's going to be a follow-up.
For sure. They'd be silly not to.
Well, speaking of follow-ups, I just want to read something. I don't know why you're laughing. I thought that was quite tame for me.
I think that's why I was laughing. I was expecting pure filth, and you gave me that. So.
But speaking of follow-ups, last month I read quite a detailed hookup horror story. Before we get into this month's, I just want to read a message out. So it was actually my friend Danny who submitted the story, and they don't mind. Now they've told me that I can say who they are, and I'll give them a shout out so you can follow them. But they've said some really nice words, and I thought it would just be nice to read them out. It's that you and Liam are amazing hosts, and it always feels like I'm sat with friends having a conversation and having running jokes. Please keep up the amazing work. I'm currently cackling trying to do leg presses.
I mean, happy to help.
Just really nice. Just because Danny has been so nice, I'll give him a shout out so you can find them on social media, because Danny's actually an amazing photographer. So if you want to find them on Instagram, it's at that Danny Wright, and Wright is spelt with a W. So that's that Danny with 2 N's and Wright with a W. And Danny's this amazing photographer. In fact, I was a hand model for them.
What? Okay, I think this is the story we need to.
We were in Manchester and we were having food on a field somewhere, and he just took a photo of my hand, and it was really pretty because I have nice hands.
It's still not making sense.
They just took a photo of my hand, and it looks nice.
Okay. I believe.
But what that does lead us into is this month we have another fantastic hookup horror story. But we have also got a nice little message before it. This person does want to remain anonymous, but they preface this to say, I just want to say thank you to you and Liam for being funny as and giving me a laugh every week. Anyway, here's a hookup horror story that you're going to love. So, dim the lights, get comfy.
Here we go.
Strap yourselves in for this one.
I'm excited.
I'm in a new city for the weekend for my friend's birthday, and we're all up for going on a night out. 2 of my friends went a bit too hard at pre-drinks, so we decided to stay in. That's all nice and good, but I'm fuming because I was really looking forward to go to the gay bar, as there isn't anything like that in the small shitty place that I live in. So I do the usual thing and I get on Grindr. Things are looking bleak, but then I get a notification from a cute little goth lad who tells me that his oral skills should be the real tourist attraction that I check out. Well, with an offer like that, I can hardly say no, so we agree to meet nearby and then go back to his place. Now, we get to his house and it is massive. It's absolutely huge. Like, he has some serious money, and his Grindr profile says he's like 25, so I'm getting insanely jealous. Anyway, he takes me into the boudoir and he pours me a glass of wine and we sit and chat for a bit, and he explains how he comes from a rich family, blah blah blah. I'm thinking I need to be on my best form tonight so I can secure the bag and get some of that family money. Anyway, we start getting it on and it is amazing. Forget foreplay, this is like 40,000 play. Anyway, he makes his way down on me, but before he actually does anything, he looks at me and he smiles these pearly white teeth, and I'm, just ready for whatever comes next. Anyway, for some reason, he's taking his time before actually doing anything, so I'm starting to get worried in case things aren't as fresh down there as they should be. But then I feel his mouth around my unmentionables, and he makes a start. Now, I'm no stranger to oral sex, but this doesn't feel like any blowjob I've ever had in my life. There's a weird sensation that I can't quite figure out. Like, his mouth is ridiculously soft, and I know that sounds weird, but that's the only way I could describe it, really. Anyway, he carries on until things come to a natural close, and I'm there panting, eyes rolling, etc., etc. He says something to me that I can't quite understand, and I think, oh, he's a spitter and he's just talking with a mouthful. But then he comes up and tries to kiss me, and I say, oh, don't you want to spit that out first? He looks at me dead in the eyes and says, spit what out? He didn't have anything in his mouth. Like, nothing. Literally, he had no teeth. He reaches over, in between my legs, picks his false teeth up, winks at me as he puts them back in, but then they fall out onto my lap. I audibly scream, and he takes offence at this. After a quick thank you and goodbye, I leave. He messages me on Grindr straight away saying that I'm very rude and that I need to grow up. I'm stunned, actually stunned. I just got a gum job and attacked by some false teeth, and he expects me not to react. So yeah, that's my story, and that's the reason why I'm tempted to ask any further hookups for dental records before anything happens from now on.
Oh my god, poor guy.
That just makes me sad. Like, what 25-year-old has to have?
Yeah, this is what I mean. I feel like there's more there going on.
I know, I want a sequel. But, I mean...
It reminded me of a friend of mine who did a hookup at Grindr, and the person turned up to his door, smiled, he realised he didn't have any teeth, and he's like, oh, well, you're here now, come on in, and enjoy himself.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to no teeth, but I feel like I would draw the line at them falling on me.
Yeah.
I think I'd be gone with that. I mean, like...
So you'd go with that, the things we've heard, and you'd go if someone's teeth fell out, but I don't know, you'd get into someone's house that's got plastic wrap everywhere, and you're fine with it.
No, the plastic wrap, that's just practical, right? That's just practicality.
Plastic wrap, I can walk in and I'm fine.
Not a murder scene.
If I'm sitting there naked, and I've just, I don't know, shot my load into someone's mouth.
But clearly it worked. That's what you're missing. It worked.
I've got a slobbery false teeth falling onto my genitals afterwards. That's gross.
Oh, I feel sorry for him. Yeah, I mean, I think he should have said, like, before.
I feel like the bit where he looks up and smiles, he should have gone and taken him out. Just to, but it's the thing that got me, the way that this person spelt out what he said, just without his filter, was like, spit what out?
It was spelt phonetically.
It was spelt phonetically, and I really thank you so much for sending that in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much every week to anyone who sends that in. I really do appreciate it. Please keep sending them in. You can send them on our social media. You can email them. You can find me on social media and just put them in my DMs, so Liam doesn't have to read them.
I kind of like the surprise. I like that you have to field them, and then you surprise me with them.
But luckily enough, there's a couple sitting in my in my inbox that haven't been mentioned yet, and I can't wait to read some of them.
I can't wait to hear them, to be quite honest. But yeah, by all means, please check us out on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter. Like Liam said, you can email us as well if you've got one of your hookup horror stories you want reading out. Also, a new thing that we're running online is we are putting together playlists now as well for each of our episodes. So if you want to kind of stay in the mood, if you've enjoyed what you've listened to today, but you maybe want some 60s goodness to go with the rest of your month, and then check out the playlist that we'll be putting up on Spotify as well this month.
They are so much fun to make, I swear to God.
You've done an amazing job. Like, I've literally been rocking out to these playlists for the last however many days.
What you've got for this month, as Liam mentioned, is you've got a lot of 60s soul and pop. There's some Dusty Springfield in there to keep it all gay.
You had me at Dusty, to be honest. Yeah, I saw Dusty was like top of the list. I was like, yeah, we're fine.
I couldn't do The Haunting without having a queer woman in the 60s on my playlist. So there she was.
Nailed it.
I've had an absolute blast this episode. So thank you both. Thank you for joining us, Craig. We really, really appreciate it.
No problems. Thank you for popping my podcast cherry, guys.
You're very welcome.
I mean, happy to help. We definitely need to get you back, like I said, at some point, because it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Plus, I know, like you said, your kind of slice of horror is definitely more the 80s side of things. And I don't know, it'd be fun to chat about that with you.
Absolutely.
To wrap things up, if people want to obviously find out a bit more about what you're doing, a bit more about you, if they want to see the pictures that we've mentioned at the start of the podcast, where can people find you, Craig?
My handle is @FisherFilms82, and that covers Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd.
Sweet.
Oh, Letterboxd.
If that's how you say it, Letterboxd. I've never said that out loud before, so I don't know how you pronounce it, but yeah. Just going to read some of my reviews. It's basically all the reviews I have on Instagram, but just on that app instead.
Yeah, you guys should definitely check it out. Highly recommend. 5 out of 5 stars.
I highly recommend Craig's Instagram out. Yeah, fantastic. A really nice visual medium to get my day started. So this has been an absolutely amazing episode. We haven't done anything spooky or like a classic horror, so it's been really fun doing that.
For sure.
Yeah, you've both been amazing. Thank you so much, Craig, for coming on. You've been amazing. It's been nice to have some eye candy to look at. That's not to say you aren't any, Liam, but
I'll just leave.
That all being said, just before you do sign us off, and I was going to say finish us off then, that would have been a slip of the tongue. Just a reminder that you have some special episodes coming up. We have a special Stranger Things recap episode that will be dropping on the 25th of May. So that'll only give you a couple of days to get ready for that and make sure you listen to us. In June, you are being treated with 3 special Pride episodes. The first of that being the Blair Witch Project, which is my choice. The next being Vamp, starring Grace Jones, with a very special guest announcement with that, so keep your eyes.
Extremely special guest announcement.
And we'll be finishing off the month of June with the camp classic Death Becomes Her, which is Liam's choice for that
My
month.
choice. You're all welcome. But yeah, we've got tons of episodes on the way for you. It's going to be a busy one. So if you like us, you've stuck with us.
Yeah. You're very welcome. So yeah, that being said, if you do want to finish me off, Craig. Oh, sorry. If you do want to sign us off, Craig, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
My pleasure. Until next time, remember, the closets were not made for people. They were made for monsters and babysitter killers.
Hey,
great, nailed it in one.
Podcast on the Super Freak Media Podcast Network. To show your support, be sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And you can find us on social media in the links in the description of this episode. Thank you for listening.